The early morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Boston Logan International Airport as 17-year-old Maya Richardson adjusted her simple backpack. She looked nothing like the daughter of a billionaire today. Instead of her usual designer clothes, she wore plain blue jeans, a gray hoodie, and white sneakers from a regular store. Her curly black hair was tied back in a casual ponytail, and she wore no makeup or jewelry. Maya checked her phone one last time before joining the security line. There was a message from her father, Marcus Richardson. "Have a safe flight, sweetheart. Remember, you can always call me if you need anything." She smiled, knowing her father would drop everything to help her, but today she wanted to do things differently. What almost no one knew was that Marcus Richardson had recently bought Atlantic Airways for $3.2 billion. The deal was still private, waiting to be announced at next week's big shareholders meeting. Maya's father had worked his way up from nothing, starting as a baggage handler at this very airport 25 years ago. Now he owned multiple successful companies, but this airline purchase was special to him. It was where his journey began. As Maya waited in line, she watched other passengers rushing past. Business people in expensive suits headed straight to the priority lane, giving her no second glance. That was exactly what she wanted. Growing up, Maya had always felt uncomfortable with how differently people treated her once they knew who her father was. Some kids at school only wanted to be her friend because she was rich. Teachers would suddenly become extra nice when they learned her last name at parent meetings. "Next in line, please," called the security officer. Maya stepped forward, showing her regular boarding pass, not the special VIP one she usually used. This was her little experiment. Her father had always taught her about the importance of understanding how regular people lived and were treated. "You can't fix problems you don't understand," he would say. Maya made her way through security without any special treatment. No priority line, no special assistance, just regular procedures like everyone else. She bought a bottle of water and a sandwich from a normal airport shop instead of going to the exclusive first-class lounge where she usually waited for flights. Sitting at her gate, Maya observed the other passengers. An elderly couple shared a bag of cookies, a mother tried to keep her 3 young children entertained, and business travelers typed away on their laptops. This was the real world, not the bubble she usually lived in. As she waited, Maya thought about her father's journey. Marcus Richardson had faced countless challenges as a black man trying to succeed in the business world. He had dealt with discrimination, doubt, and prejudice, but he never let it stop him. Instead, he worked harder, studied longer, and proved everyone wrong with his success. He had taught Maya to be proud of who she was, but also to be aware that not everyone would treat her fairly. Now boarding Atlantic Airways Flight 207 to Chicago, starting with our first-class passengers, announced the gate agent. Maya looked down at her first-class ticket. Her father had insisted on booking first class for safety reasons, even though she had wanted to try economy. "Some risks aren't worth taking," he had said firmly. Maya stood up, picking up her backpack. She had chosen this specific flight because it was one of the busiest routes, perfect for her experiment. She wanted to see how the airline staff treated regular passengers, especially those who looked like her. Would they be as polite and helpful to everyone as they were when they knew they were serving important people? As she walked toward the gate, Maya felt both nervous and excited. She had no idea that what was about to happen would not only change her life, but would also transform Atlantic Airways forever. The simple boarding pass in her hand was about to become the starting point of a story that would make headlines across the country. Little did anyone know that the casually dressed black teenager about to board Flight 207 was actually the daughter of the airline's new owner, and she was about to experience firsthand why her father's mission to change the company's culture was so important. Maya walked down the jet bridge with her boarding pass held tightly in her hand. The smell of coffee and airplane fuel filled the air as she approached the aircraft door. A flight attendant with perfectly styled blonde hair and a name tag reading Karen Walsh stood at the entrance, greeting passengers with a practiced smile. "Good morning," Karen said cheerfully to the businessman in front of Maya, checking his ticket with a quick glance. But when Maya stepped forward and handed over her first-class boarding pass, Karen's smile disappeared. She stared at the ticket for much longer than she had with other passengers. "There must be some mistake," Karen said loudly, causing several nearby passengers to turn and look. "This is a first-class ticket." She held the boarding pass up as if it were suspicious. Maya felt her heart beating faster, but she kept her voice calm and steady, just as her father had taught her. Yes, it is. Seat 2, please. Karen's eyes moved from Maya's casual clothes to her simple backpack, then back to the ticket. How exactly did you get this ticket? She asked, her tone suggesting she already had her own answers. I bought it. Maya replied simply, although technically her father's assistant had purchased it. She could feel more passengers gathering behind her, waiting to board. Well, Karen said with a fake smile, let me just verify this with my supervisor. We've had some issues with ticket confusion lately. She emphasized the word confusion while giving Maya a look that clearly showed what she really meant. Maya stood quietly as Karen picked up the plane's phone and called someone. She could hear whispers from other passengers. An older woman in expensive jewelry shook her head and muttered something about standards these days. A man in a business suit sighed loudly, checking his watch as if Maya was deliberately wasting his time. I'm sure a seat in economy would be more appropriate, Karen said while waiting for her supervisor to answer. We could move you right now and avoid any confusion. Maya thought about her father and how he would handle this situation. Marcus Richardson had built his success on staying calm under pressure and documenting everything. She pulled out her phone and started taking notes about the time, the flight attendant's name, and exactly what was being said. Karen noticed Maya taking notes and her fake smile wavered slightly. What are you doing? I'm just documenting our interaction, Maya said politely. Please, continue with your verification. A younger flight attendant named Sarah Johnson appeared at the door, looking confused. What's the problem, Karen? We have a situation with a questionable first-class ticket, Karen replied, emphasizing the word questionable while glancing at Maya. Sarah looked at the boarding pass and then at Maya. Unlike Karen, she smiled warmly. The ticket looks perfectly valid to me. Let me show you to your seat, miss. But Karen stepped in front of Sarah. Protocol states we must verify any suspicious tickets. We have high-profile passengers in first class today who paid a lot of money for their exclusive experience. Maya felt her face growing hot with embarrassment, but she remembered her father's words. Sometimes the best response is to let people reveal who they truly are. Fine, Maya said calmly. I'll take an economy seat for now. She watched as Karen's face lit up with satisfaction. Sarah looked troubled. But miss, your ticket is for first class. You don't have to. It's okay. Maya interrupted softly. I'd like an economy seat, please. But I would appreciate it if you could write down your full name and employee ID number, Ms. Walsh. And yours too, Sarah. Karen's triumphant smile faltered slightly as Maya pulled out her notepad again. She roughly scribbled her information, clearly annoyed but unable to refuse such a simple request. As Maya followed Sarah toward the economy section, she could hear Karen greeting the next first-class passenger with renewed enthusiasm. She took out her phone, not to call her father, but to document everything that had just happened. This flight was going to be very interesting indeed, but not for the reasons Karen Walsh imagined. Maya settled into her economy seat, 23C, trying to ignore the whispers and stares from nearby passengers who had witnessed the scene at the front of the plane. Her hands were shaking slightly as she pulled out her phone, but her face remained calm. She had learned from her father that true power wasn't about making a scene. It was about being patient and collecting evidence. Sarah, the kind flight attendant, stopped by her seat. I'm so sorry about what happened, she whispered. This isn't right. I can still try to get you back to your first-class seat. Maya smiled and shook her head. Thank you, but I'd rather stay here for now. She noticed how Sarah's name tag was slightly crooked, and her uniform wasn't as crisp as Karen's, but her eyes held genuine warmth. Could you tell me how long you've worked for Atlantic Airways? Almost 3 years, Sarah replied. I love flying, but honestly, she lowered her voice, things aren't always great here, especially since Ms. Walsh became the head of cabin crew 6 months ago. A commotion from first class interrupted their conversation. Maya could hear Karen's voice, extra sweet and helpful. Of course, Mrs. Anderson, let me help you with that designer bag. We're so honored to have you flying with us today. 2 rows ahead, an elderly white woman in expensive clothes turned to her husband and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, Thank goodness they're keeping first class exclusive. You never know who might try to sneak in these days. Maya pulled out her notebook and wrote down the comment, along with the seat number. Her father had always told her that the best way to fight discrimination was to document everything. Create a paper trail, he would say, because people can deny words, but they can't deny evidence. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Maya noticed something interesting. The flight attendants had different ways of treating passengers. Karen and her friends were extra nice to well-dressed white passengers, but barely looked at others. Sarah, however, treated everyone the same, helping an old Indian man with his bag, bringing water to a Hispanic mother with 2 kids, and making sure a young black businessman had everything he needed. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Olivia. "How's the flight going?" She started typing a response but stopped when she saw Karen walking past, giving her a suspicious look. "Phones should be in airplane mode now," Karen said sharply, not using the friendly tone she used with other passengers. "And please make sure your seatbelt is properly fastened. I'm sure you know how to do that." The last comment dripped with condescension. Maya nodded politely, turning on airplane mode. She noticed how Karen didn't check any other passengers' phones in the economy section. Everything was going into her notes. As the plane took off, Maya thought about what her father would say when he found out about this. Marcus Richardson wasn't just any businessman. He was known for fixing broken company cultures. He had turned around 5 major companies already, not just making them more profitable but making them better places to work. The plane reached cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign turned off. Maya watched as Karen rolled the drink cart through first class, laughing with passengers and offering premium beverages. When the cart reached economy, it was pushed by Sarah and another flight attendant named Michael, who were doing their best despite having fewer options to offer. A teenager sitting next to Maya, who looked about her age, turned to her and whispered, "What happened up there wasn't fair. My mom's a lawyer who handles discrimination cases. You should report them." Maya thanked him but didn't mention that her father's legal team was 10 times the size of most law firms. Instead, she asked him about his experiences flying Atlantic Airways. Every story, every detail, every incident could help create the change that was coming. Change that Karen Walsh and the others didn't know was just around the corner. Looking out the window at the clouds below, Maya felt a mix of emotions. She was angry about the discrimination, yes, but also determined. This wasn't just about one flight attendant or one incident anymore. This was about systemic problems that needed systematic solutions. 2 hours into the flight, Maya had filled several pages of her notebook with observations. She watched as Karen made her 5th trip to check on the first-class passengers, while barely glancing at anyone in economy. The difference in treatment was becoming more obvious with each passing hour. Sarah stopped by Maya's seat again, this time with a complimentary snack. "I grabbed an extra cookie from first class," she whispered, placing it on Maya's tray. "It's not much, but—" "Thank you, Sarah," Maya smiled. "Could you tell me more about what it's like working here? How are things for the crew?" Sarah glanced around carefully before sitting in the empty seat next to Maya during her break. "It's complicated," she said quietly. "Some of us love the job itself, but the environment can be challenging. Karen and her friends make all the decisions about schedules and assignments. If you're not in their group, you get the worst routes and shifts." Maya listened intently, noting everything in her book. "Has anyone ever complained?" Sarah's face fell. 3 flight attendants filed complaints last year. All of them were fired for performance issues within 2 months. Now everyone's too scared to say anything. Just then, Maya's phone lit up with a text from her father. "How's the flight, sweetheart?" "Everything okay?" She typed back a simple, "All good, Dad. Learning a lot." If only Karen knew that every minute of this flight was helping Maya understand exactly what needed to change at Atlantic Airways. Suddenly, there was a commotion several rows ahead. An elderly Asian man was trying to explain something to Karen, but she was speaking to him very slowly and loudly, as if he couldn't understand English. "Sir, you cannot move to first class," Karen said in an exaggerated way. "Your ticket is for economy." The man, who had been speaking perfect English, tried to explain again. "I just need to use the first-class bathroom. The ones back here have long lines, and I have a medical condition." "Rules are rules," Karen said firmly, pointing him toward the back of the plane. First-class facilities are for first-class passengers only. Sarah quickly went to help the man, offering to walk him to the back and ensured he got priority access to the bathroom there. Maya noted how many other passengers looked uncomfortable watching the scene, but nobody said anything. Maya pulled up the airline's policy handbook on her phone, the same one her father had studied thoroughly before buying the company. There was nothing in the rules about restricting bathroom access. This was just another example of Karen making up rules to discriminate. As the flight continued, Maya noticed more patterns. Karen and her team spent 80% of their time in first class, which only had 12 passengers, while Sarah and 2 other attendants handled all 160 passengers in economy. When meals were served, first-class passengers got immediate attention for every request, while economy passengers often had to wait 15 to 20 minutes for basic things like water. Maya started a new page in her notebook titled Immediate Changes Needed. Under it, she listed points like equal distribution of staff attention, standardized service protocols, and anti-discrimination training. Her father had taught her that good leadership wasn't just about pointing out problems. It was about finding solutions. A baby started crying in the row behind Maya. Instead of helping, Karen walked past quickly, muttering something about control your child to the embarrassed mother. Sarah, despite being clearly exhausted from handling the entire economy section almost alone, rushed over to help, entertaining the baby with a small toy while the mother could eat her meal. Maya added another point to her list: employee recognition and promotion based on actual service quality. Sarah was exactly the kind of person who should be leading the cabin crew, not Karen. As the plane began its descent into Chicago, Maya felt more determined than ever. This flight had shown her exactly why her father's secret purchase of the airline was so important. Atlantic Airways didn't just need new ownership. It needed a complete transformation of its culture, starting from the very top. After landing in Chicago, Maya stayed in her seat as other passengers got off the plane. She wanted to observe how the crew treated different people during the deplaning process. Karen was at the front door again, giving warm goodbyes to first-class passengers while barely acknowledging others. Sarah noticed Maya still sitting and came over. "Everything okay? Do you need help with anything?" "Actually, yes," Maya said, pulling out her notebook. "Could you tell me more about your experience here? What would you change if you were in charge?" Sarah looked surprised but sat down in the empty row across from Maya. Most passengers had left by now, and Karen was busy chatting with some wealthy-looking travelers near the front. "Well," Sarah began hesitantly, "I'd start with fair treatment for all passengers. No more special attention just based on how people look or dress." She twisted her hands nervously in her lap. "And maybe a better system for crew assignments. Right now, it's all about favoritism." Maya wrote everything down. "How many other flight attendants feel this way?" "Most of us," Sarah admitted. "But Karen's friends with the regional manager, so she gets away with everything. Last month, she made a young black family with first-class tickets sit in economy because she overbooked first class. But I saw empty seats up there the whole flight." Maya's pen moved quickly across the paper. "Has anyone ever tried to report these incidents higher up?" "The problem goes all the way up," Sarah explained. "Last year, James, our best crew member, tried to report discrimination. He was fired 2 weeks later. They said it was budget cuts. We all knew the real reason." Just then, Karen's voice carried from the front of the plane. "Sarah, stop chatting and help clean up. We have another flight in 2 hours." Sarah stood up quickly. "I should go." But she hesitated, then pulled out a small notebook of her own. "I've been keeping track too. Dates, incidents, everything. Maybe someday someone will care enough to listen." Maya smiled. "I think that day might come sooner than you think." She took out one of her father's business cards, the plain ones that didn't show his connection to Atlantic Airways, and wrote her personal email on the back. "If you have time, send me your notes." As Sarah hurried away, Maya watched Karen ordering around the cleaning crew who had just boarded. Her voice was sharp as she pointed out spots they'd missed, treating them like they were beneath her. Maya checked her phone. The shareholders meeting was in 3 days. Her father had planned to announce his ownership then, but after everything she'd seen today, she wondered if they should move faster. She opened her notes app and started organizing her observations into categories. discrimination against passengers, unfair treatment of staff, safety and service issues, policy violations, potential legal issues. Just then, an older cleaning lady approached Maya's row. Karen's voice rang out again, "Make sure you check everywhere. Some people leave such a mess." She emphasized some people while looking directly at Maya. The cleaning lady, whose name tag read Maria, gave Maya a kind smile. "Don't worry about her, sweetheart. Some people are just bitter with life." Maya smiled back, noticing how efficiently Maria worked despite Karen's constant criticism. Another name for her list of employees who deserved better treatment. As Maya finally stood to leave, she saw Sarah helping Maria clean, even though it wasn't her job. Meanwhile, Karen stood at the front, checking her makeup in a small mirror. Walking up the aisle, Maya stopped next to Karen. "Thank you for the interesting flight, Ms. Walsh. I learned a lot today." Karen's fake smile appeared again. "Next time, dear, try to book the correct class for your situation." Maya nodded politely and walked off the plane. 3 days until the shareholders' meeting. 3 days until everything would change at Atlantic Airways. And Karen Walsh had just given her all the evidence she needed to start that change. The grand conference room at Atlantic Airways headquarters buzzed with excitement. Over 100 shareholders and executives filled the rows of seats, all wondering why this emergency meeting had been called. Karen Walsh sat in the front row, wearing her best uniform and chatting confidently with the regional manager. "I heard we're getting new investors," Karen whispered loudly. "They'll definitely want to keep our high standards in first class. My methods work. Our premium passengers always come back." At exactly 10:00 a.m., the company's chief financial officer stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. We're here today for a historic announcement about the future of Atlantic Airways." The doors at the back of the room opened. Marcus Richardson walked in wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, his presence commanding immediate attention. The room fell silent. Behind him walked Maya, now dressed in a professional blue dress, her natural hair styled elegantly. Karen's face went pale. She grabbed the arm of the regional manager sitting next to her. That's the girl from Flight 207, the one I removed from first class." Marcus reached the podium, his voice strong and clear. "Good morning, I'm Marcus Richardson, and as of last month, I am the new owner of Atlantic Airways." The room erupted in whispers. Karen sank lower in her seat as Maya walked to the front, standing beside her father. "Some of you may know me as the founder of Richardson Global Enterprises," Marcus continued. "But what you might not know is that I started my career as a baggage handler right here at Atlantic Airways, 25 years ago." He paused, looking around the room. 3 days ago, my daughter Maya took a flight on one of our planes. She didn't use her real name. She didn't mention who her father was. She simply booked a first-class ticket like any other passenger. Maya stepped forward, her eyes finding Karen in the crowd. The flight attendant looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Maya had experienced something that, unfortunately, many of our passengers face daily, Marcus said, his voice growing serious. She was denied her rightful seat, humiliated in front of other passengers, and treated with disrespect, all because of the color of her skin. The room was completely silent now. Several executives were frantically flipping through papers, probably searching for details about Flight 207. "But my daughter did something remarkable," Marcus continued, smiling proudly at Maya. "Instead of pulling rank or calling me, she turned this incident into a chance to understand exactly what needs to change at this airline." Maya opened her notebook. "During my flight, I documented 27 separate incidents of discrimination, 15 violations of company policy, and numerous examples of unfair treatment toward both passengers and staff." Karen's face had gone from pale to bright red. The regional manager next to her was now trying to distance himself from her, sliding his chair slightly away. "I also met some incredible employees," Maya added, her voice clear and confident. "People like Sarah Johnson, who showed what real customer service looks like by treating everyone with respect, regardless of their ticket class or appearance." Marcus put his hand on Maya's shoulder. "Today marks the beginning of a new era at Atlantic Airways. We're not just changing ownership, we're transforming our entire company culture." He looked directly at Karen and the other nervous executives. Some of you might be worried about your jobs right now. Good, you should be, because starting today, discrimination and disrespect will not be tolerated at any level of this company. Maya watched as Karen grabbed her purse and stood up, probably planning to make a quick exit, but Marcus wasn't finished. However, he raised his voice slightly, making Karen freeze mid-step. We believe in second chances and learning opportunities. That's why, before anyone leaves this room, I want to share our comprehensive plan for mandatory retraining, new service protocols, and a complete restructuring of our customer service department. The meeting was just beginning, but the message was clear. Atlantic Airways was about to change forever, and it all started because a black teenager in first class was judged by the color of her skin rather than the ticket in her hand. The week after the shareholders meeting brought big changes to Atlantic Airways. Maya sat in her father's new office, watching as workers installed a fresh company logo on the wall, the same eagle design but now in shades of blue and gold that represented unity and excellence. Sarah Johnson, now wearing a supervisor's badge, walked into the office with a stack of papers. The first round of sensitivity training is complete, she reported, placing the documents on Marcus's desk. And you won't believe what happened during today's session. Maya leaned forward, curious. What? Karen Walsh actually apologized, Sarah said, still sounding surprised. Not just a fake apology either. She broke down crying and talked about how her own grandmother had faced discrimination years ago, and somehow she'd turned around and done the same thing to others. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes people need a mirror held up to see what they've become. He picked up one of the reports. How are the other changes going? Sarah smiled brightly. The new, respect for all policy is already making a difference. We've removed the barriers between first class and economy bathrooms. The crew rotation system is working better too. Everyone gets fair shifts now, not just the favorite group. Maya opened her laptop to show Sarah something. Look at these customer feedback numbers from the past week. The screen showed a graph with rising satisfaction scores. When people feel respected, they enjoy their flight more. It's that simple. Just then, Maria, the cleaning lady from Flight 207, knocked on the door. She was wearing a new uniform with a team leader badge. Mr. Richardson, the crew meeting is ready to start. Marcus stood up. Thank you, Maria. And please, I told you to call me Marcus. He turned to Maya. Would you like to join us? This is your project too. Maya grabbed her notebook, the same one she'd used on that faithful flight, and followed her father. They walked through the renovated office space where the walls now displayed photos of diverse crew members and passengers, along with the company's new motto, "The sky belongs to everyone." In the large meeting room, 50 flight attendants sat waiting, including Karen Walsh. She looked different now, more humble, her perfect appearance slightly relaxed. She sat in the middle of the room instead of her usual front row spot. Marcus stepped up to the podium. Good morning, everyone. Today marks 1 month since we started our company-wide transformation. I'd like to share some numbers with you. He clicked a button, and the screen behind him lit up with statistics. Customer complaints down by 70%. Employee satisfaction up by 85%. Booking rates increased across all ticket classes. Social media sentiment improved by 90%. But numbers don't tell the whole story, Marcus continued. The real change is in how we treat each other and our passengers. Maya watched as Karen raised her hand nervously. May I say something? Marcus nodded, and Karen stood up. A month ago, I thought I was protecting the airline standards. Now I realize I was just protecting my own prejudices. She turned to face her colleagues. I'm sorry for how I treated many of you, and I'm grateful for this second chance. Sarah, sitting next to Maya, whispered, She's actually become one of our best trainers for the anti-discrimination program. Who would have thought? Maya smiled, remembering something her father always said. Real change happens when people choose to be better, not when they're forced to be different. After the meeting, Maya walked through the terminal where her journey had started 1 month ago. The same gates were there, the same planes waited outside, but everything felt different. She watched as a young black girl in a princess dress walked confidently toward first class, her parents following with their tickets. At the gate, a familiar face greeted them. Karen Walsh, who knelt down to admire the girl's dress before checking their tickets with a genuine smile. Maya took out her phone and snapped a picture. This was what success looked like, not just changing rules and policies, but changing hearts and minds, one person at a time. 6 months after the famous shareholders meeting, Maya stood at the podium of the National Aviation Industry Conference. At 18, she was the youngest keynote speaker in the conference's history. The huge hall was packed with representatives from airlines around the world, all eager to hear about Atlantic Airways' remarkable transformation. 6 months ago, I was just a teenager who got denied a first-class seat. Maya began, her voice confident. Today, I'm here to tell you how that incident changed not just one airline, but started a movement in the entire industry. The screen behind her showed pictures of Atlantic Airways' journey. The first image was of Maya in her simple clothes from that fateful flight, followed by photos of the airline's transformation. Our story went viral not because of the discrimination I faced, Maya continued, but because of how we chose to respond to it. Instead of firing people or seeking revenge, we decided to create real, lasting change. In the front row, Marcus Richardson sat proudly watching his daughter. Next to him was Sarah Johnson, now the head of customer experience at Atlantic Airways. And there, a few seats down, sat Karen Walsh, no longer a flight attendant, but the leader of the airline's new anti-discrimination training program. In 6 months, we trained over 3,000 airline staff members, Maya explained. But more importantly, we've shown that changing a company's culture isn't just good for people, it's good for business. She clicked to the next slide, showing Atlantic Airways' latest numbers. Highest customer satisfaction ratings in the industry. Record-breaking profit margins. 95% employee retention rate. Zero discrimination complaints in the past 3 months. But the numbers don't tell the most important part of our story, Maya said, gesturing to her father to stand up. The real success is in the little moments that happen every day. She played a video on the big screen. It showed clips from recent flights. A Muslim family being warmly welcomed in first class, an elderly Asian couple getting extra assistance without having to ask, a black businessman being treated with respect, and flight attendants from all backgrounds working together happily. These moments matter, Maya emphasized. They show that respect and equality aren't just nice words for company posters, they're the foundation of a successful business. Karen Walsh stood up next, sharing her own story of transformation. I used to think I was maintaining standards, she admitted to the audience. Now I understand that the highest standard is treating everyone with dignity. After the conference, Maya walked through Chicago O'Hare Airport with her father. They stopped at gate C-17, the same gate where her flight had departed 6 months ago. Look at that, Marcus said, pointing to a new sign above the gate. It read, "The Richardson Rule. Every passenger deserves first-class respect." Maya smiled, remembering how nervous she'd been that day, pretending to be a regular passenger. "Did you know this would happen, Dad, when you bought the airline?" Marcus shook his head. "I bought it because it needed fixing. But you, Maya, you showed everyone how to fix it the right way." They watched as passengers boarded a flight, noticing how the new Atlantic Airways staff treated everyone with the same warm respect. Sarah was there, training a new group of flight attendants, including some who looked like they'd never had a chance at such jobs before. A young girl walking past recognized Maya from the news. "Are you the first-class seat girl?" she asked excitedly. Maya knelt down to the girl's level. "I am, but you know what? These days, every seat is a first-class seat when it comes to how you're treated." As they walked away, Maya took one last look at the gate. The story of the black teen denied a first-class seat had become more than just a viral moment or a scandal. It had become a lesson about how to turn discrimination into determination, how to transform prejudice into progress, and how one person's courage to document the truth could create change that would last for generations to come.